Hey guys, today we are reading Luke chapter 9. And we start out with Jesus sending out the 12 apostles, as we talked about on a few Sunday mornings ago, right? They're disciples, and now they're being apostles, apostole. They're being ambassadors. He's giving them power. He's giving them ability to do miracles, all to prove that the word of God is true, that Jesus was from God. And then after that, we see the only place that we really see it is in Luke. It says that Herod is perplexed, and it ends, it says, and he sought to see him. This is not that Herod thinks that Jesus is the Son of God. This is simply just what we call curiosity. He's hearing all these things. He's hearing the miracles. There's lots of evidences. So he wants to go out and to see really for himself what this Jesus guy is doing. Not in that he's seeking him for salvation or for belief, but really just for entertainment and curiosity. After the apostles return, right? Because Jesus sends them out to Jerusalem for a time, and now they come back, and then we see, starting in verse 10, the feeding of the 5,000. So the apostles come back. Of course, they're telling Jesus all the stories of all that they've ministered, and because they've come back and Jesus is going, a crowd is attended, and so it's getting dark, and the apostles say, "Hey, Jesus, send away the crowds," and Jesus said, "No way. We'll feed them," right? And so he feeds them, and we've seen that in both Matthew and Mark. And then right after that, we see Jesus ask them, who do they say that I am, right? Who do the crowds say that I am? They say, some say you're John the Baptist, some say that you're Elijah, some say that you're a lot of things. But we see that Peter says, you are Christ the God, you are the Messiah, the anointed one. And so we can see here, even though Peter doesn't fully understand who Jesus is yet, he knows more than the crowds. He knows more than the people who are following Jesus. And Jesus goes on and foretells his death. And we can see he uses lots of verbs, right? That the Son of Man must suffer, will be rejected, he will be killed, he will be raised, and of all these verbs. And we know that's the truth, right? We know that's what's going to happen. But he tells him that. And then we see after that, he goes into what we talked about Sunday morning, right? The cost of discipleship. For whoever would save his life eternally will lose it worldly, right? And so much like we were talking about just Sunday, that Jesus doesn't save us to leave us. Jesus saves us so that we can die for him and that we will live for him. We are just like the Israel of the Old Testament. God has chosen us. He has saved us for those who believe, and because of that, we are the light on the hill. We are the light in the world. We are that salt that we talked about on Sunday. After that, we see, starting in verse 28, the transfiguration. Once again, that Jesus goes on the mountain. He takes Peter, James, and John, leaves the other disciples at the bottom of the mountain to continue to do ministry and to preach the gospel. And while they're on this hill, he starts to glow. We see Moses and Elijah come in. They spoke of his departure, which was about to be accomplished, right? So they're speaking about the crucifixion. They're talking about the most important part, right? And once again, I know we talked about this on a Sunday. Peter came up and said, "Hey, I can build you some tents. I can build you some tabernacles." Because in Peter's mind, he was thinking this is better than suffering and dying and being beat and resurrecting, right? This is so much better. Stay here. In this state, the world will know that you're God, right? And so God, it says he overshadows him. Once again, that's the word from Matthew of when God comes and overshadows Mary. Just saying that fully encompasses this. And he says, "This is my son." Listen to him. Let him do his will. He's doing my will. He knows what he is doing. And so it's just a reminder to listen to him. After that, we see some more miracles that Jesus heals a boy with an unclean spirit. After they come back down, the disciples, the 9 disciples who've been at the bottom of the mountain, they've been doing miracles and preaching the gospel, but there's one boy they could not heal. Now, we learned in Matthew that it was because he was mute. The demon made him where he could not speak, and it was common belief that you had to know the name of the demon before you could cast him out. That was just Jewish belief. And so what's happening here is the disciples are following what they know, not what they believe, right? And so like, oh, he can't speak. Oh, then we can't do anything. They didn't have that much faith to go over what heritage or what Jewish thought said, right? And so they come to him, and Jesus rebuked them, right? He said, "Oh, faithless, twisted generation, how long am I to be with you and bear with you?" Jesus knows. He already said his face is towards the cross. He knows that the cross is coming very, very soon, and his disciples still don't have the faith that he wants them to have. Once again, after healing that boy, Jesus foretells his death again, right? He says the Son of Man is about to be delivered into the hands of man. But they did not understand this saying, and it was concealed from them so that they might not perceive it. So even though Jesus is explaining it to them, Jesus is still holding it back, and they don't fully understand what is to come. They're getting the light, they're getting the pictures, but it's not clear yet, right? And so that is intentional. That's intentional for them. It's also intentional for Jesus, because if they knew exactly what was happening, they would most definitely try to talk Jesus out of it, right? And so Jesus is keeping that from them. Then we see the disciples get into an argument, who is the greatest, but it says that Jesus, knowing the reasoning of their heart, he knows while they're arguing who's the best, right? They want to know who number 2 is, number 3, number 4, number 5, number 6. But once again, Jesus just simply answers this and says, "For he who is least among you is the greatest." Jesus is saying, I am going to be the greatest in heaven, right? Because he is the least. He is the ultimate serving, giving his life for all those who believe. We see in verse 51, we pick up with this idea of Gentiles again. Remember, Luke's writing to Gentiles, and it says that Jesus was heading towards Jerusalem, heading towards the cross, and they are going through Samaria. And they are kind of skirting on the edge before they go into Perea, which we just talked about Sunday, right? So they're coming down, they skirt the edge of Samaria, and he says he sent some people to do some room and board there, right? To find some people that would host them before they would jump the Jordan, follow all the way down to Jericho, and then come up to Jerusalem. And it says that they do this, but what happens, the Samaritan people do not want Jesus there, right? The people did not receive him because his face was set toward Jerusalem. The people did not want him because he was going to Jerusalem. And the Samaritans know that all Jews hate him, especially the Jerusalem Jews, the ones who were most set. The Pharisees, the Sadducees, the Essenes, the most religious, hated them. So they said, why would we give you room and board? Because you're going to really the people who hate us the most, the enemies. No, we're not going to help you. And the disciples turn around and say, "Lord, do you want us to tell fire to come down from heaven and consume him?" The disciples say, basically, "God, Jesus, do you want us to wipe them out?" And notice it says, and he turned and he rebuked him. Once again, we talked about this many times. Every time that Jesus rebukes something, it's always of Satan. And so we can see that Satan is moving even in the hearts of the disciples, right? Because we have this idea that because they are not wanting salvation as Samaritans, they are wanting destruction. And so he rebukes them, and they went on to another village. They went on to Perea, which we were talking about Sunday. And then we kind of come exactly to what we were talking about Sunday, the cost of following Jesus, one of many sermons and many topics that he would have preached as he was traveling. And it says that he's traveling along and somebody said, "I'll follow you wherever you want to go." And Jesus replied, "The foxes have holes, the birds have air, of the air have nests, but the Son of Man has nowhere to lay his head." He's saying basically, if you're going to follow Jesus, it's going to cost you everything. Even the animals have homes. I don't have a home. I don't have anything. Neither do my disciples. Neither do those who are following me. It's going to cost you everything, right? And then it says, there was another who said, "I will go, but let me bury my father." Now, when we read this in our English mindset, we think of this man's father has passed and he just needs to go to a funeral. That's not the case. He's saying, let me go home and let me wait till my father dies. I'll bury him. I'll have inheritance to live off of, right? Because I won't have a job because I'm following Jesus, and then I will follow you, right? So let me go and wait till I'm ready, until I have everything to follow you. And Jesus says, let the dead bury the dead, right? Let the dead bury their dead. But for as you go and proclaim, these are statements of right now, right? Don't wait on a better time. Don't wait till you're financially ready. Don't wait till your family is ready. You go and do it now. That's what a disciple would do. And he says, verse 61, yet another said, I will follow you, Lord, but let me first say farewell to those at my home. This is not a long delay as the second guy who said, let me wait for my father dies. He says, let me go home. Let me make arrangements for my family, right? Probably days, maybe a week or two. And even then, Jesus said to him, no one who puts his hand to the plow and looks back is fit for the kingdom of God. Commitment is needed in harvesting. Jesus is saying to all those who want to follow him, it is a task. It is a chore. It is something that we are called to and that we must be ready for. And so all of these people, right, these three examples that we see here, says, Jesus, I'll follow you, but I need to do something else. And Jesus saying, if you're going to follow me, come and follow me right now. There is no but. Come and follow me. Have faith in your God, and he will provide. Are you ready to follow Jesus? Hope that makes sense. I know it was a long chapter, but we are enjoying this. I am. I hope you guys are. And we will see you tomorrow in Luke chapter 10. God bless.